Welcome. I'm Nick Edgar.
And I'm Jess Frost.
And we are the co-founders of the 3E Space. This is our podcast. Have you got space for this?
An unscripted and unplanned podcast dedicated to curious, messy, and imperfect conversations about the human experience.
Each week we will pick a topic at random that you, the audience, has said, I'd love to see Jess and Nick explore this topic. So without further ado, grab yourself a cuppa, let's explore, get energised and feel empowered together.
Let's go.
Let's go. Hello.
Welcome back, team, to this episode of Have You Got Space for This?
Special birthday episode, I might say.
I can't believe it.
Happy birthday. Well, happy upcoming birthday.
Thanks, Dar. My last day of being 40.
No.
The big 4-0. I can't believe how quickly this year's gone. And I was saying to you earlier, wasn't I? Like, I still don't feel older than like mid-20s.
Yeah, we reflected on this quite a lot, weren't we, in terms of what energy do we bring to different parts of our life and different relationships and different situations.
Yeah.
It's interesting to really pay attention to it.
It is. But no, it's been a weird year, tough year, turbulent year at times. But today has just felt like really joyous. Like before we came to the studio, we were just sat in the window of this coffee shop and I had my first iced latte of the year and the sun was roasting, wasn't it, coming through the window, and the music was blaring in this cafe, music I fucking love. And yeah, I just feel so full of joy. And a lot of the work we have to do with ourselves and that we help other people with is being able to receive that joy. So it was really good to like intentionally sit there and deep breathe and just go, I'm safe. I'm safe to be in this moment where everything feels safe and calm and aligned. Do you know what I mean?
I know there's almost an element of surprise sprinkled over that, isn't there, sometimes, when it's like, oh my God, I'm feeling joy. And also permission to allow it, because, look, there's a lot of things going on in the world at the moment which aren't very joyous.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think it's important to honour that, but that doesn't mean that it's not possible or appropriate to also have the experiences that we've just had.
Yeah.
I'm really I am passionate about that. Like we were just talking about ages. And I think for me, you know, the news item of the week is sort of Trump, Vance and Zelensky and the way he was treated in the Oval Office. And I watched it and I just thought, this is just drama triangle playing out. It's bullying. It's all about fear-based power and control.
Bullying. Yeah.
And it's hard for me to like not feel, it's hard for me to engage with it. It's hard for me to witness it. That something so, to me, obviously abusive is going on and being tiptoed around.
Yeah.
So I want to call that out because it's, do you know what I mean? But at the same time, that doesn't mean I have to spend my every waking moment walking around in feeling despair, feeling like there is no hope, feeling like, you know, might as well just give up. Because actually that is what a younger me kind of would do and did do.
And that's what people are relying on, isn't it? And I think
so.
There's a lot of narrative beautifully at the moment about reclaiming your joy and reclaiming your nervous system, because like just that display of behaviour will be activating for so many people that are on their healing journey, that have been on the end of abuse, whatever that might have looked like. It's going to be activating to our nervous systems in so many different ways. But I think when we can, like you say, hold both of, oh, I've just read this or I've watched this and it's really triggered me and I feel really scared, to then in the next moment being able to look at the flowers and look at the sun and feel that sun on my face and listen to that music and be able to hold that. And then I got here and was like, getting ready for this pod. And then I smashed my perfume across the floor.
Oh no, bless you. I heard it go as well. I was like, I did one of those like Homer Simpson moments of like,
okay, back up. And I just had to laugh and I was like, this is life. Like,
I know, proud of you.
receive and you lose and you feel sad and you feel joy. And yeah, that's what I'm bringing to this space. I think just that feeling like, again, just the human experience.
Well, it's giving yourself the freedom and the privilege to open yourself up to receive it, I think, and to notice it. And that's really important. And big up to Josh and DPU for that, because that's part of the reason why we're leaning into reflecting on and thinking about joy, especially in relation to our little one.
Yeah.
And a birthday's a great time to do that as well.
It is. It really is. It's that chance to reflect, isn't it? I was even going to write a little love letter to younger me. I think I might do that later on, to let them know what's actually happening at 40 and what awaits them in the most beautiful way,
Yeah, I love that.
But yeah, we're really leaning into this, and we've invested in a couple of other things, haven't we? A couple of other coaches for our own kind of personal development, professional development, that is really going to just take ourselves to that next level.
Yeah, we're doing this group program led by Mastin Kip, and we did an exercise last night, a group, like a watch party, an exercise of thinking about our nervous system and what it, using music and colour to actually see if we can feel those different states. So everything from safety and joy and happiness as green, through to that kind of that threat, that anxiety, that worry of yellow, and then that real like sadness and almost melancholy of red.
It was fascinating to
being jolted
bear
out of
witness to how comfortable we felt in each. And actually, the most comfort for us both did help that they played Linkin Park, I'm not going to lie, on the angry bit. All right. Shut up when I'm talking to you. But it was being comfortable in that anger and in that sad and despair, and how almost lit up I got in those songs. And then actually when it came to the joy, I was like, okay, well, this is where the growth is going to come in, because it's easy for me to sit and stay in anger, sad, despair, than it is in joy.
Well, because I think, as I'm going to speak for me in this case, because we have some similarities in our experience of what you were just describing, and I think there is something about the familiar, I would describe it as, being more chaotic or more depressive, or like, that's what my nervous system is more used to. So it feels more comfortable in that that kind of discomfort, and sitting in joy and dancing and having upbeat tunes just feels really unfamiliar to actually engage with and really feel present with. And actually I've definitely got a part that for years would have written off all kinds of music as I'm just not into that. Like it's poppy, it's it's not meaningful. And we touched, didn't we, on the last episode about meaning and pain and all of this. So I do think that for me, moving forwards, it's really thinking about those attachments and about what meaning I give to my experiences, and actually being curious about whether I want to carry those same meanings and attachments forward, or whether I can open myself up to something new.
New neural pathways, isn't it?
I think so.
It's just rewiring ourselves a little bit differently. What did you say as well, like about Marillion? Like, was I sad because I listened to Marillion, or? Yeah,
I was paraphrasing. I can't remember the comedian's name, so I really apologise for that. But he did a show about Marillion years ago. And Marillion was a band that I just, for some reason, got into really young, at 11. And I think I was 10 when Kaylee, their biggest single, came out. And I just fell in love with it. Their album was called Misplaced Childhood. I mean, talk about apt. I have tattoos based around a lot of their imagery, gestures. But what I reflected on last night is at that age, their opening lyrics to their opening track on their debut album is, "So here I am once more in the playground of the broken hearts." And I felt
seen in that moment.
You know what I mean? But yet that album, and some others as well, like that melancholy, that I felt seen. Even at that age, in that mood, and I felt safe in that music. So I think I just find it fascinating to reflect on and try and allow me an opportunity to connect with me at that age. But also to check in on them and let them know that this isn't what life is for us.
Yes. There's way more.
And I want to bring
green.
them. Yeah, exactly. I want to bring them with me. I want them to experience different things and not just that.
Yeah. That's it, isn't it?
Yeah, I think
helping
so.
them find safety in something a little new.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where we don't get stuck there. And it does fit with what you were talking about depression in the last episode as well, doesn't it? Of like, how do we make sure that we allow ourselves to move through, not to feel great all the time, but move through all these different states.
Yeah, and I think that's why holding multiple truths at the same time is really important. I do. Yeah. Because I think there's a tendency to want to singularize our experience and not allow other things to exist at the same time.
True that. Shall we pick?
Yeah.
That was a good, solid...
That was a solid check-in and intro. I'm here for it. So, keep the topics coming.
Oh, forgot to. Loneliness. Oh, this is where the sad part of us feels really safe.
I think that part of me just lit up.
Should just quote lyrics. Ian, legend.
Oh, mate.
Loneliness.
Big love.
Well, you know what? It does actually fit with what we've just been talking about. Gosh. I think, if I'm honest, I think I've felt lonely most of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there's a lot of people share, don't they, that, you know, they can feel really lonely when surrounded by lots of people. And I think that's probably how I've always felt. Probably why, similar to yourself, I've been so connected to music and musicians and lyrics, because I felt so like I didn't fit into normal world.
Yeah.
That I felt I was on the periphery of groups. That there was something odd about me, misplaced about me, that, yeah, I'd hear lyrics and I'd suddenly feel less lonely. Like, there've been periods of my life where to feel less lonely and in pain when I've been, especially like single, living on my own, like I would have to listen to the same albums falling asleep every night. Because a random music artist would make me feel connected when I couldn't feel connected to the human beings that were in my life.
So when you say connected, do you mean, I'm quite curious now. I'm curious about what the music was. If you're happy to share it, if you're not, that's cool. But also, when you say connected, do you mean connected to yourself? Connected to your own experience through that music?
Connected to my own experience and connected to another human being. When I didn't really feel like I got genuine connections with anyone in my life, probably. And I now know why that is, but I'll give you some musicians.
Yeah, I'm here for it. Let's do it.
Sia. And Ben Howard. Those two, probably the most traumatic time of my life, when my dad had moved into a halfway house but was still struggling with his alcoholism. I was living on my own and I was having these wild hallucinations at night. They must have been trauma related. I've not had them for years, but yeah, I would have these like really strange hallucinations at night. I used to have to put the CD on to go to sleep. I have to do that now with meditations really now, but yeah, back then, like Sia's lyrics, and it was way back before she kind of blew up in fame. I want to remember the name of the album. I'm not going to remember it, but it was like every lyric spoke to my soul. And yeah, like that's transported me back to a place and a time when I felt incredibly lonely, and I wouldn't have even known how to connect, if that makes sense. And I'd plaster a smile on and I'd do well at work, but like each night I would I'd run. I was running back then, but then on the way home, I'd go pick up a bottle of wine, and it would be like just the same routine every day of like, right, run to run away from my shit, pick up a bottle of wine at the end because I almost felt too much joy and too much dopamine. Go home, numb out, listen to my tracks, and go hopefully be able to get a bit of sleep.
Yeah, that was a real thing, wasn't it? Which I don't do in any way near as much frequency as I'd love to now, which is just listen to music and be with myself with music.
Yeah.
I really want to honour that younger you that found that. It's Brené Brown that says we're hot wired for connection and we need it.
Yeah, humans need it. But sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, but I think when we don't have it authentically, when we don't have it from our caregivers in the way that we need, or other people in our life, that we seek it in ways which can be dysfunctional and almost always are, actually.
I think, yeah, the music breathed me. That was one of the main tracks by Sia that I was absolutely obsessed with. That's now
I knew
used
you'd want to remember that.
Oh, it really bugged me. Something About Small Things, anyway, was the title of the album. But yeah, it did. It enabled me to feel less alone in my experiences, and also allowed me an emotional release. That was my like tactical cry when I didn't really allow myself to be vulnerable or cry in public.
Yes.
With people, it would be like in private, I'm going to drink my wine, I'm going to listen to this music because this is going to allow me to sob my heart out, and I've got a reason because it's the lyrics, it's not me. You know what I mean? It's like that that safety of like, oh, I've not got shit, I've not got problems, I'm crying for them.
Is that how it was for you?
Probably.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah. Whereas I think if I'd have allowed myself to just sit in a therapy chair and talk about my own pain, that would have probably been too overwhelming. So I think being able to connect to that music. But yeah, I definitely think loneliness is, when I think of it from now what I know about the nervous system and what the nervous system requires from a safety perspective to be able to connect with another human being on a real, genuine level, I don't think my body's ever, or my nervous system's ever really felt safe enough to do that. And it's why my school report said that, you know, Jessica has 1 or 2 friends. And then, you know, when I've gone through this healing journey and people have fallen away, it's been the loneliest I've ever felt in my entire life in terms of physical, like actual people connection. And I think a lot of people find that on their healing journey.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I would definitely say as a recovering people pleaser that the repeated acts and behaviours associated with people pleasing led me, it was always a road to, first of all, resentment, but then loneliness.
Yeah.
And there was, when I developed a self-awareness to know that was a part of me and how I had found safety, especially in groups of men, it took a long time, and arguably I'm still working on it, to like ensure that I don't become who I think people need me to be, to, you know, to be accepted, to be loved, and that there is such a loneliness because then we're never really known by anyone.
Yeah.
And that's a hard truth. I think I heard that for the first time in Good Will Hunting. I think Robin Williams reflects that back to Matt Damon, like in, you know what I mean, about how he's going about his life then, that you just never really know anyone.
I really relate to that. And that's that personal responsibility on my part of how much I let people in and how much I contributed to my loneliness.
Yeah.
It's that definite give and take and that nervous system work that I didn't have access to, that would have enabled me to develop that vulnerability enough to let people really see me. Whereas up until the last even 5 years, those masks and that armour has been so strong. So I really relate to that.
Yeah, it's something I continue to reflect upon. But I think it's also something which is really common. I think a sense of loneliness, regardless of the company that you're in, if you are having to abandon yourself to be in the company that you're in, whether it's a one-to-one company in a relationship or within family dynamic or at work or in your sports team or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And I suppose the question then to get curious about is, well, how do you overcome loneliness? How do you begin to find genuine connection with self and with others? And it has to be that taking that personal radical responsibility to first of all notice this is how you're feeling, to accept the uncomfortable truth of loneliness and the uncomfortable feelings of it, and then I think to ask for help.
Yeah.
And there's something about, and it's come up in all of the work that we're doing personally as well as when we're supporting others, you can only do so much alone.
Exactly that. And I think, to go back to what you were saying about like what do people do when what do they do? Yes, the radical responsibility. I think there's a degree of healing required, whether it is through traditional therapies or more holistic approaches. I think very importantly is the somatic and the nervous system work, to be able to get to the top of like that ladder of polyvagal theory and that ventral vagal state where we feel safe enough to be with others and connect. But yeah, I think we've lost so much of that community feel, community connection. Can't imagine what it's like to be an elderly person that might be on their own in now. But there is a loneliness epidemic. I think what we experienced through the pandemic will have contributed. I think there is so much individualism. There is just so much focus on ourselves. I have to take responsibility that, like, a lot of the time, and, you know, I think since actually embarking on my healing journey, I've even retreated a little bit more from people, if I'm honest with you. But I'll literally sometimes, like, peek out the front door and think, oh my God, there's a neighbour here. Like, I need to get to my car. Like, how do I go?
Yeah.
Like, I put my hands up. Like, I'm terrible for it, aren't I? Like, where I'm like, oh God, please don't make me speak to anyone. Like,
it's interesting. It is interesting. Like, have you explored that? Why that is?
Yes.
Talk to me about that.
Like,
I'm happy to.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think I've, for so long in my life, 33 years, I've managed to get through life with masks, with armor, I didn't have to be vulnerable and connect with people and risk being hurt or abandoned and rejected because I was so busy. Like, I probably deliberately took a job in recruitment that meant I was working all hours.
Do you think that was like a...
It was it was attractive to my nervous system because it was chaotic.
Yeah.
Right? So the trauma to not just, you know, mental trauma, but physical, holistic trauma of growing up around addiction and dysfunction, the healing journey doesn't always feel better. It actually can feel more raw, I think, sometimes. I'm not going to speak for everyone, I'm going to speak for myself. When I start removing some of the protectors that have been there the whole time, and I move from, I'm going to leave the corporate world and I'm going to start my own business, I'm going to have more freedom, like, it feels fucking awful.
Yeah.
Where suddenly I've got more space, I've got more calm, I've got more time, I've got more choice. That, for my nervous system that is accustomed to chaos, stress, sadness, despair, all those things that we've talked about, suddenly has more opportunity to be in the green and like be in joy and build safety around it. But that almost feels more threatening. So, like, I will retreat and I won't make friends. I won't deliberately put myself out there to connect and have more friends, because when I've done that, something's happened that's either been a red flag or because I've got more awareness now. of what I'm willing and not willing to put up with, or what makes me feel and what makes me feel safe and what makes me feel unsafe, that there's been periods where I've gone even further back of like, fuck this, man. I am just going to put this fence around me. No one's going to get close to me. So it's a damned effort for me, as someone with complex trauma who is on their healing journey, to, don't get me wrong, okay, I have my own communities. I do peer support spaces for adult children of alcoholics. I have group programs. I have no problem connecting to those amazing souls.
Yeah. That's really important, I think.
It's not like I'm literally like, I don't speak to anyone. Like those people that are in those spaces, you know, I'm really blessed that they've been with me. Like I call them OGs, you know, a lot of them have been with me from the start. That's a real, genuine, deep connection where I have found a good degree of safety. Mm-hmm. I'm very selective about who gets to come into those spaces. They're very intimate. It's not like, come on in, everyone. It's very, very carefully created for the safety for me and the safety of those other people that are healing from complex trauma. That's really important. But I've had to work very hard to find safety with you as my romantic partner.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
I'm really proud of you for that.
And you've seen how push and pull, you know, that's part of my attachment, how that can be tricky at times. But we're over the 2-year mark. That was my usual benchmark for relationships.
Well,
so we're doing pretty great, right? But when it comes to really intimate, close, especially physically close friendships, I'm still working that ladder to try and get to the green. And I probably will for the rest of my life just have like a very small handful of people that I 100% trust, that I will let in, that I'll be really intimate and vulnerable with. Because the impact on me from a social sense, from a trust perspective, from so much, has had an impact on me. And I want to honour that for those that are listening to this, that are like saying, I really feel fucking lonely, but everything I try and do to build a connection just makes me want to fucking fly back and retreat even further.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's hard. And I think it is where you have to go at your own pace. It's like I've got one foot in safety, I've got one foot out of safety. And, you know, luckily with some of the women that I am in spaces with, you know, we get to be vulnerable about this stuff and like say even like, oh, you know, when you did this, or when I got put into this WhatsApp group, or it felt really overwhelming to my nervous system. So I don't want you to take offense if I don't respond to you straight away, or if I ask to be removed from a WhatsApp group, or all these things that like you would never have dared say before, is so imperative for me to not just fuck off and never speak to them ever again.
Yeah.
So it's messy as fuck, mate, basically.
I know. And thank you for explaining that so eloquently.
I don't know if I did.
And honestly.
I
think you
that's
did.
That's just my truth. That's just how hard it can be for me.
But
when it comes to friendships.
As your partner, having seen and witnessed to varying degrees of closeness some of these experiences you're talking about, I've also seen you heal, learn and grow each and every time some of these instances have happened.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I think that's important, so that your frame of reference and your window of tolerance changes.
Yeah.
So you notice the red flags earlier, you act on them quicker.
Yeah.
There are all these learning points, and I think that is what it's about. And it's so hard to get that across, I think, on social media, especially in social media posts, even just on something as simple as boundaries.
Yeah.
Because it's terrifying. They often don't work.
No.
Because the person you're trying to put the boundary, or people don't want them because they like the version of you that existed before. But you're the one having to sit with that experience and to try and keep yourself feeling safe, feeling capable, and actually, like you said, not just turning your back on even trying.
Yeah. That's it.
Which is actually the easiest thing to do.
It's recognizing, okay, my nervous system is controlling this whole situation right now. and it could set a fire that doesn't need to be set.
Yeah.
And is there something different, or is there a vulnerability, like I just mentioned, about saying to someone, look, I feel a bit overwhelmed, this is rushing a bit too quickly,
Yeah.
can we just slow down? But
these are hard things to talk about and have a conversation with somebody, because it requires them to have the compassion, the capability, the understanding of where you're coming from, the vulnerability, all of those really important ingredients in order to have a productive conversation where you can move forwards from. Well, I think it's really challenging.
Well, people talk about it from a romantic relationship. You know, when you have conflict in relationship, there's therapists that can help you. There's all these resources available, right? How you can build vulnerability with a romantic partner. Not much out there for friendships, not going to lie. And it's the same thing that you're trying to do. You're letting someone into the deepest, darkest parts of you. And for someone with complex trauma, if that person doesn't have, again, that willingness or vulnerability or desire to meet you there, that just hits those wounds even more.
I mean, I think I'm really curious about this particular part of loneliness and friendships, because friendships by their very nature can cover a wide range of experiences, what they mean. You've got everything from superficial groups of friendships, which is about, you know, it's very surface level. I always found those kind of friendship groups really difficult to be part of, because for me, connection, it was like I just felt lonely in those circumstances. I needed that deeper, more honest, more open capability.
Can I say drugs?
Well, sometimes. Well, no, but that very often is why. That would be the connector.
Deep conversations.
That would be the connector,
3 a.m.
I think. Yeah, but within a lot of those groups, I was always somebody that would both seek those conversations out and have people seek me to have those conversations with.
Yeah.
Because, like, one of the things about certain types of drugs, like MDMA being a big one in my experience, is that you're just pushed by that desire to connect even further.
Yeah.
But you're driven to do that in a way that in that moment, in that experience, with that drug in your system, you can't do it in a surface level way. So you're kind of forced out of your comfort zone. And that's really uncomfortable for people. So actually the thing that I was always seeking, the thing that I was always looking for, just as part of my way of being, meant that I was much more capable of holding somebody else in that space than they were of holding themselves. That's my truth.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I began to resent the drug, and I began to resent that was the friendships, because that was the only way that could happen. So, like, it wasn't genuine. It wasn't. There were real parts to it, I think, but ultimately, I just came to believe over the past few years that it's just a bunch of horse shit.
It's like that
mostly.
It's that faux connection, isn't it? That in the moment it feels so intense and it feels so real and you feel so deeply connected. And then you wake up the next day with the most fucking horrendous hangover and just like of overshared.
Wake up like 2 days later.
Yeah, 2 days later, shaking. Yeah, with like Suicide Tuesday, going, what the fuck have I done?
Well, certainly in the last few years, like, it became something that I wouldn't do very regularly at all. And when I did, I would craft out enough time to make sure I could fully go through everything you've just described in probably about a week.
So proud of us,
like,
though.
what's the fucking point?
5 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
I do think, though, that to be fair to those experiences, they were what I needed, and they were the best I knew at that time for who I was. And some of those times were fucking hilarious as well. Like, that's important to know.
A good times, like some genuine good times.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think this is the thing, right? I fully am aware that I have a disorganized attachment style, and which plays such a huge part in my connection and my loneliness.
Yeah.
Because when it's disorganized, you've got like anxious, avoidant, you've got this push, pull. And it would be, I'd be like, I'm there like crying, craving connection. And then at the slightest sniff of it, I would almost have that similar experience to you where I craved that depth. But the reality was when it got too close, I'd pull away. I was emotionally unavailable as well. I'd be like, oh, I'm so emotionally available. And like, oh, I just want deep connection. Fuck that. I wasn't at all. As soon as there was a glimpse that someone would really get to know me and who I really was, that part of me would be like,
and we have that in
Run,
common. We have that in
get
common
out.
in every romantic relationship I've ever had. That's exactly what happened. I discovered, and it took me a lot of those experiences to realize it, but I discovered that the very thing I craved the most was the thing that I was most afraid of.
And that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah.
It is, we're most afraid of the thing that we crave the most. And we're just in this like push-pull, which for securely attached people is really jarring.
I know.
Really jarring.
Sure, I was with many securely attached people because I'd have been a red flag to them.
Exactly. They've been like, stay the fuck away from
Like,
them.
seriously.
Yeah.
And rightly so.
Yeah. But we get like trauma bonded with people, you know, and like our little inner children are like drawn to someone else's wounded inner children, and you're just in this unconscious thing. But if I think about a time when I felt my most lonely, like it really was when I was experiencing suicidal ideation for the first time. I didn't want to be here. I didn't feel connected to anyone really, genuinely outside of myself. And I had no fucking clue who I was. And I think that's where finally doing the work in here and finding that connection and reclaiming myself was so important. Because even if I didn't have the external connections, even if there was still loneliness to a certain extent, which there still is for me today, it never got to that level of crisis. It never got to that level of pain because I had that more secure attachment with myself, which gave me like a foundation that was less, you know, unstable.
I think, to be brutally honest, in terms of my own experiences of loneliness leading to suicidal ideation, really was, if I'm honest, I think it was fear and shame based that would only allow me to go so far.
Yeah.
It would always be like, yeah, just, I don't know, it kind of took me out. It would take me out of it. And it was like being in a, you know, like when a plug's open and the water's circling down it, and it would be like that, and I'd get to the edge of the plug and then it would be like a reset, and then it'd be sucked in again, and then a reset, and sucked in again, and a reset, and sucked in again, and a reset, just over and over and over and over again. I consider myself fortunate that I think, having already had a therapeutic experience and having asked for help before, that I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for only having gone as far as I've gone. But I feel I have an understanding of why you may not be able to pull back from that, because the pain is so great.
Yeah.
And I think from some training I did last year, I really resonated with the phrase that really most people that choose suicide and see it through isn't because they want their life to end, but they want the pain to stop.
Yeah.
And they've exhausted every other way they can think of and every other tool that's at their hand and every friendship that they've got, and they are so lonely in that experience with their own pain that it's the only choice left.
Yeah.
And I've got nothing but compassion and love for that, because I've got as close as I ever hope to get to understanding what that feels like. And it's horrendous.
No, it is. It's that like internal family systems. When you talk about the firefighters that step in, that sometimes, you know, the rebellious ones with their behaviour, setting fires everywhere, drinking, drug taking, all those things. But it is that like top of that hierarchy of firefighters that goes, we need to put out this pain. This is the only way that we can see us protecting you from this level of pain. And I think on that journey of loneliness, being able to not self-abandon and distract and do the things that make you look out here, but actually go in here to feel and find safety with what it is that we're actually feeling, and being able to be that almost parent to ourselves and give ourselves in those moments ways to soothe in different ways. It helps ride out some of the actual physical lack of connection. But I think I've shared this a lot over the years, over the last 5 years. When you are on your journey, when you're on your healing journey, and especially because I speak to a lot of codependents who've always been reliant on connection with others, but in a detrimental, toxic way. When you start to separate yourself from others and you start to go, this is where I begin and end, and this is where this other person begins and ends, and you don't require that dynamic to have self-worth, rest assured you'll feel lonely as fuck a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Whilst you're still on that journey of self-discovery, that gap, that messy middle, as we call it, that shaky ground where you're like, fuck me, all these old people from my past are now dropping away because the dynamic no longer works, but I haven't yet replaced with new people. That's a really normal part of the process.
Yes, I think in those circumstances and in others as well, loneliness isn't only appropriate, I think it's necessary.
The loneliness, the quiet, the calm, the space, the stuff that you would have distracted in your own way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that peace that we all say we want, isn't it? Oh, I want peace, I want freedom. And then we get it and we're like, what? And that is where the growth really, really happens, when we can find more safety in our nervous system for that new.
Yes, but I think part of that process is being able to connect with those experiences of loneliness and a whole range of other really challenging emotions to sit with, and meet yourself where you are with all of those. Yeah, really difficult.
And when parts of you, because I know, like, when I was single especially, and I'm sure there'll be people listening to this that are single that have these moments of just like almost desperation. I remember feeling so desperate for, I thought it was connection, whether it was sex or hanging out with someone or like being on dating sites, and every part of me was going, just take a break, Jess. But it was like this incessant need to be in contact and be communicating with someone. And just, I wished back then I had the knowledge that I know now to go inwards and ask myself, what is it I'm actually needing right now? What part of me is desperate to speak to this person, connect with this person, get back into toxic dynamics so I don't feel lonely?
But I think that's, for me, I think that's one of the, I think it can become a really healing experience to connect with those younger versions of yourself that didn't have the skills and the knowledge that you have now.
Yeah.
Because I think as long as you don't fall into judgment and recognise that they did the best they could, then ultimately I think there's a real way to have that experience of bringing them into the present with you, rather than leaving them in the past. That's for me certainly been really important. Like, some of my loneliest experiences were on a fucking football pitch. Like what had been my playground and my safest of places, like had become just an awful, it was like being in the Colosseum, of just horrendousness. I hated it. I hated it. I had to be, by the time I finished playing for the first time at 26, I had to be high to play football. As mad as that is. And no one in that, well, maybe one person, but no one in that team knew I was high.
Yeah.
Just bizarre. So I was just disconnected from myself.
And that's
I didn't feel anything. Like one of the greatest natural feelings in the world I've ever experienced is scoring a goal in a kind of game where there's real meaning to it. And that release and that connectedness with your teammates in that second is really genuine. And you see it on the TV, like it is. But when you're having that experience and you're not feeling anything at all because you're having to protect yourself from how you feel, like, I know what that feels like too, and that's fucking lonely.
Yeah.
So I think it's a word like so many other topics that we've unpacked that has so many layers to it, you know, and, you know, we've not even touched on loneliness within families. I mean, fucking hell.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. But I think it's a word that can scare a lot of people. It brings up a lot of fear, doesn't it? That we, again, something we want to escape from. But when we can again lean in, if we are starting, like you said, then, you know, it was an environment that I felt fine in, and then suddenly I felt incredibly lonely. Like, when we can identify that feeling of loneliness and what that means for us and how we behave and what we think and feel, there's probably some guidance inside. Once we can go inwards to be like, okay, something shifted here. Is this that I'm just needing some space to reconnect with what I need? And then I can take different action. But it's just something that offers that chance to reconnect, whilst also not taking away from someone that's really struggling genuinely with loneliness and isolation, because there's so many people out there right now that are so isolated and so in need. But I think it starts with us, like, because my default is to go out and rescue those people that feel isolated, rescue those people that are really struggling. And actually the person that needed rescuing was in here. So I think it's just something to continue to reflect on, isn't it? And I invite everyone listening to this, if this has sparked something in you, to get curious about what loneliness means for you and how it's showing up. And I'm going to continue to do the same. Yeah, keep climbing that ladder to the green. I don't think I'll ever be like an extrovert. Fuck that. But I will be in certain spaces. That I feel safe in.
Yeah, I agree. For me, I think it's all about continuing to expand the frontiers of what I'm allowing myself, the privilege and freedom to feel is okay for me. Like, and if that's continuing to grow, and I'm continuing to learn, and I'm continuing to accept myself as much as I can, all the parts of me as much as I can, then I'm moving forward in a way that I want to be moving forward with, even when it's really difficult and challenging. And I think that for me is why, when you can find pockets of safety to even acknowledge how you're feeling, especially when it comes to something like loneliness, that's just going to allow you to move forward that much quicker. And I don't think you have to suffer alone.
No.
In your experience.
No.
And I'm really, really passionate about all of us, as much as we can, being open to somebody coming to us, but also checking in on people. I think that's really important as well, without, as you said, rescuing and taking responsibility for someone's experience. Exactly. Or trying to fix it.
It's the lone wolves out there, the hyper independence. Like, this is something I need to hear all the time. Like, I don't have to go this alone. That doesn't have to be my safety.
Yeah.
And actually, we are all deserving of support and community. And when we can find that safety within, to be able to lean in, there is so much abundance waiting for us, isn't there, as well? We really do deserve it. So, big love. Love this conversation. Yeah, thanks, massive. Ian. We love you.
Top man.
We'll see you soon. Thank you so much for listening or watching this week's episode of Have You Got Space for This? If you're liking what you're hearing and seeing, please subscribe, rate, or review the podcast, so we can reach as many people around the world.
And if you're not already connected with us and are aware of everything we do at the 3E Space, in the show notes you will see all of our handles and ways to get in touch with us, which we'd really love you to do. Get connected with us, give us your feedback on this and any other episodes you listen to, and also topics. Keep giving us topics, and stay connected. So until next time, thanks for being here.